I'm really into the analytical and consultative aspects of selling. And for me, definitely the biggest value you can bring to the table as a business development professional is really thinking in a very analytical mindset. For me, I actually started my career working at big four firms, so doing financial services. So for me, made a bit of a transition into the business development space. And I definitely don't like the traditional stereotype of the talkative sales, like, car salesman. So for me, definitely, I think that I'm really into the analytical and consultative aspects of selling. And for me, definitely the biggest value you can bring to the table as a business development professional is really thinking in a very analytical mindset, understanding the problem that the buyer or the partner you're faced with is how they're framing it from an ROI perspective, getting deep into it on a product level. And if you bring all those aspects together, it's a really interesting profession, and not just simply reading a PowerPoint deck and talking a lot. So that's definitely, I would say my main emphasis, and something I try to preach to my team is thinking analytically and being consultative. And then, generally otherwise in terms of, approaches. So it's not an exact science. So if it was, we probably wouldn't be having this podcast, because everyone has their own different take. There are, best practices and processes and frameworks you put in place, but kind of consistent with the analytical and consultative aspect. My approach is also to be, a bit scrappy. And the value I would, always associate that with is resourcefulness. So, the old adage, do things that don't scale. So, we're going to have a framework, but I try to sometimes, and I want my team to think out of the box and to be creative, because if it was easy, and we're just following a simple framework step by step, we probably wouldn't need to have our jobs. So those are, I would say, definitely the two aspects in my main approaches, analytical and being creative and a bit scrappy.
That's interesting. So it sounds like, processes are important, but really what you drive is a fundamental value, which is your scrappiness, which is your analytical mindset there. Sounds like that maybe carries your reps more than a process ever could do.
Yeah. So, as I said, process is important. They're milestones, but at least most of my experience is on enterprise sales and bigger ticket size, and now in partnerships. Every deal is different. You have to think about it differently every way. So the process provides a strong framework and make sure you hit certain touch points. Same way, a discovery call, people say it's a conversation, but you shouldn't go in blind. You need to know the questions, the qualifying questions going in. So I don't advocate for a script, but I advocate for having those questions in mind and written down somewhere. And same thought process here. You have the touch points, but then you need to think, really consider your buyer, your partner's value proposition, how they're framing the decision. So as you hit the nail on the head, it's all about value.
Driving reps to have a sense of why and to describe the sense of why and the vision with a prospect or customer, and also with the analytical piece, the detailed analysis of what's going on and the ROI and things like that. How do you marry those two things together to make sure they're balanced?
Yeah, so I mean, the why is any purchase or business decision is a commercial decision. So the why is going to be quantified at one stage. You understand their North Star metric or how they're thinking about it and what's the end goal, just high level terms. Okay, they're coming to us for a partnership because they want to fuel their growth in Latin America. I don't know, they're coming to us to buy our product because they want to increase their level of conversions. So you understand very high level what they're trying to achieve, and then you think about how do you quantify that. And it takes a unique approach. And the one thing I always say to my team is the one thing about, well, regardless if it's you presenting it or even them, the one thing about the business model is that it's not going to be right, but at least it gets the conversation going and you're talking the same language. So make, assumptions. It's fine. They're going to, they're not going to be right. But it's going to allow you to talk the same language. You can iterate on the business model together. And then, okay, you present, okay, this is how we're inferring the value that you're going to get from this partnership. You're now thinking about the problem in the same lens, and then they'll give you some input. Okay, yeah, maybe actually we tweak this input here, and then you're building something together, keeping in mind that at the end of the day, they're going to take whatever you produced as just an input for the business model they're going to do with their CFO. So it's an exercise, and it's really, I think, just to go back to your question, a matter of thinking very high level. Okay, what are they trying to achieve, and what's a number that we can, or what's a KPI that will address that objective.
And that's where the consultative part comes in, it sounds like, Michael.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, it's not, especially when you're working with deals of a certain scale, it's not simple transactional aspect. It's okay. It's there's a problem. We need value. Let's show them how we can be one potential solution to this issue or this need of theirs. So indeed, it's about wearing that consultative hat.
Fantastic. I want to go back to the process piece you talked about, and this idea that we have processes, but at the same time, people need to have their own critical thought. Now, when you have the most long-standing, maybe your high performance reps, how do you bring them in to help you design a process and to give a reflection on the process that exists? Do you ever do that, and how does it work?
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of goes back to the culture piece. And for me, is about creating a collaborative culture. So and being humble. So yes, of course, we're here. I think the role of managers is changing as well, or has changed, and it's more of coaching rather than directing, especially now. And definitely want inputs. They're on the ground. They managing a high volume of sales cycles, so their inputs are extremely valuable. And I just, for a story, I think that's relevant here, is I had a former colleague, and I remember she used to only ask the other team leads whenever she had a question, because she didn't want to, she didn't want basically to demonstrate that she didn't know something to her team. And I thought that that was extremely backwards mentality. So I'll be the first one to ask my team a question to fill in the gaps. There's nuggets of information all across the organization. So in designing the process, yes, normally the team leads will have the first say. But I will always, either formally or informally ask the team for their inputs to help design the process and iterate.
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of living the consultative value you try and drive in reps to have with customers, as it is with you between the team as well, if you think about it that way.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, it's a process. You have the building blocks, but you need to iterate consistently. So we need to adapt to the market. We need to adapt to our experiences. So it's definitely important to be inclusive and to leverage the experience of the team.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to go back to that coaching piece you mentioned, because it is so important for leaders at the moment. I totally agree with you. How do you diagnose where individual reps need coaching? What does that look like? And does data come into that, or is that just your relationship?
Good question. I would say that it's a combination. So of course we have objectives. Our team has quota and try to have a create a very accountable culture. So okay, we align first on the objective together. We set them together. There's mutual buy-in. And once they accept that, they need to be accountable for it. So that's the number one metric. Then there's sub metrics. So, depending on the ramp up of the rep. So you have someone who's been there for 2 years and knows and is fully accountable for their quota. Then you have someone who's been there maybe, is more junior. And you have to set sub goals that are more realizable because maybe you're not able to handle the full sales cycle. So you define those SMART objectives and those metrics that you can measure them on. But then in terms of, identifying the specific aspects, so that's more at a global level, but then identifying the specific, areas where they need support. I try to be, I want my team to be independent, but also collaborative, as I mentioned, and not scared to knock on my door for any question they have. So I try to firstly lead by example. But then if I notice that there's a specific area, we do a deep dive, and also regularly scheduling kind of more formal check-ins, whether that be me shadowing a call or deep diving on a business plan that they're building. And that also goes into the ritual. So we have ritualized meetings where we go through the deals, and basically that allows me to identify areas where I think there needs some coaching.
Yeah, superb. And that's a crucial piece I think everyone grapples with. It is the deep dive, and it is getting almost like an empirical sense for what's happening with those deals. So how do you get a sense of surety that we know what's really happening with the deal? What does the process look like? How do we cut through the fluff sometimes?
Yeah, so I mean, that's, I guess, going back, that's being loyal to an extent to the process. So you have certain milestones you need to hit in our sales cycle, basically. Okay, you want to put it in this position in the pipeline, then I expect that you've already gone through a business plan build with the presented and built the business plan and discussed with them. So as opposed to you telling me, okay, I think it's going to close in Q2, I know you've hit that milestone and I know where exactly it's sitting because you're following. There's good, sales pipeline hygiene in the CRM, and I know that you've hit this stage. And then going through the, getting through the fluff, as you would say. I think that's my role to challenge and to be very granular in the coaching support. So, okay, what's the blocking point? I'm here to help you maybe think about. I'm not going to provide a magic solution, but I can maybe unlock and challenge you to think about a different way or a novel way to accelerate or to address this issue. And we'll go through the email, we'll get very granular with it. So I'd rather spend the time in a one-to-one as opposed to going like in a mid-level review of every deal. Yeah, maybe a quick scan of the pipeline and then doing a deep dive in one deal specifically where I think I could provide the most value.
I love your phrase of unlocking the solution there. It's a really good way to think about it as a leader. The final question I have for you, Michael, is if you're in a room full of the best leaders who do this kind of thing, what would you ask them?
What is the biggest change, I guess, from where do you need to level up in terms of managing or working in an organization where you're maybe 20 to 50 million in ARR versus over 100 million in ARR? What are the key milestones as a professional, as a manager? How do you make that jump? Because constantly you hear the organization outgrew, or basically he couldn't scale with the organization is how it's always framed. So how do you avoid being one of those casualties? How do you evolve fast enough in a hyper growth organization? Because some of the most inspiring stories are the guy who was hired as head of sales and then graduated to be VP of sales and then scaled with the organization. So how do you level up